We met via TikTok. The first lockdown, which I think for you was in around March, when I joined TikTok, I came across your page and I really loved the whole kind of on-site, blow-by-blow, informative vibe of the way you were describing what was happening at the time down in Italy. And then the second time, I think you found me, it was in June, around June, and you realized what I was doing, and then we started communicating via TikTok, realizing that there's these two creatives maneuvering themselves through a very strange time in history. I started in the arts in the 90s. I did my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Sculpture, and in that time I realized I like working in detail, but I didn't want to work on that large scale. So years later I went back to undertake a jewellery course, loved it, and then wanted to pursue it and learn the skills. So I went back to uni and did that at about 34 years old. It was a great defining point in my life because then I just really knew what I wanted to do. And in 2008 I qualified, and I had been working in the industry ever since. The jewellery has been a wonderful segue from one path of sculpture, learning about dimension, understanding the 3D, to this lovely kind of small scale detail, but also looking at that 3D. And I consider it art. I mean, jewellery is quite technical, but I work with contemporary jewellery. I love the idea of being artistic and pushing those boundaries. And people seem to really go for it. I'm not for everyone, and I don't set diamonds and I don't do wedding rings and things like that. I'm not a formal jeweler, but it seems to work. I think when the pandemic hit, it was quite a shock to everybody's system, but as an artist, I think the freedom of being able to go about my business in my day the way I wanted to has always been there, and that didn't really change, as opposed to someone who would go to a 9-to-5 job and have to leave that workspace and go and work from home, as per se. I've always worked from home. I have a workshop at home, so that wasn't the shock. I think mentally it put limits on people and myself in terms of my business. And also I think I had to order everything online in terms of materials and all that. Some of the shops closed down during that time, and it was, a bit of touch and go with how much productivity you could get done in that time in terms of orders and so forth. So that was very stressful. It impacted my business in a way that was good and bad in some way. I was just about to get a new website organized, had the model set up and the whole shebang. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet up. I couldn't see my website designer. All those things had been put on the back burner. So I joined TikTok, and that's where, in a way, TikTok sort of propelled a lot of what the website would have done at the time in terms of traffic. And for me, it was this twofold. It was successful via TikTok, but then delayed the process of getting my website up and running, which I'm in the process of doing right now. So there was that double impact. But certainly on a mental level, it created a constriction that I don't think anybody was ready for. And it was quite a sort of cerebral awakening, as per se. I think initially when COVID hit, the media had a huge frenzy of fear, and everybody was rushing around thinking we're all going to catch this disease, it's going to be, an end of world kind of scenario. As I came to grips with the whole idea of COVID, and of course sticking to the protocol, because we didn't know much about it at the time, especially in the first introduction to it in January, February, and the numbers were rising. That did initially become something that we were having to manage in terms of our safety. But as time went on and I sat and had a good think about it, because I watched a lot less of the news in that time, I realized that we're going to have to sit back and, like you say, reinvent yourself. Multiple streams of income is so important this time. So I started making masks, well, just in case the jewelry wasn't going to sell and things like that. The masks took off, the jewelry started selling. As I started posting on TikTok, I had the time to post, and to join TikTok, I realized, oh, this is a great selling tool. And I posted, I think, my first fingerprint pieces that I made on TikTok, and it just took off. Really took off, and I got a multitude of orders from the US specifically. That was a really wonderful platform for me to be able to propel myself during this time where so much fear and so much, doubt about people's, occupations were floating around, especially with the media exacerbating it. So for me, I was able to really use those streams of income to be quite productive. And I think out of this whole thing, where I fall on the spectrum is really, quite an esoteric thing. It's hard to explain, but I know that it takes in this times an emotional kind of intelligence that will get you through, because our day-to-day 9-to-5 kind of jobs will be becoming quite difficult to sort of slot in to what's happening. Of course, Giovanni, I would love to do a collaboration with you. We are not just makers, we are artists, and the way we make the beautiful symbiotic fashion and jewelry come together so beautifully. I think as artists in this modern day, we don't do that enough. And when you think about, past, movements like Cubist, and even in the Renaissance and Surrealism, artists were getting together and inspiring each other. And I think that we just don't do that enough. It would be wonderful to work with you. I look forward to it.